Good morning. This is the World History Teachers channel, and today's topic is the first Indian and Chinese civilizations. Now, as we've previously discussed, the river valleys were important for the development of civilizations in Egypt and Mesopotamia, and this was also true for South and East Asia. So we're going to talk about both the river valley civilizations in India today, as well as in China, and some of the religious beliefs that developed in both of those places before we move on. All right. Now, and it's just a broad overview for today. Now, first of all, the first civilization we're going to discuss is what is known as the Indus Valley Civilization. Now, the first civilization that emerged in the Indian subcontinent around 2600 BC was along the Indus River in what's today called modern Pakistan. This civilization lasted 700 years until the cities built by these peoples were abandoned for some unknown reason. The two main cities of the civilization were Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa. Hence, the civilization is often called Harappan civilization. These cities were well planned, laid out in large city blocks, and had houses that were equipped with plumbing systems for drainage, sewage, and baths. Sanitation, of course, was of a great concern because for these people, because archaeologists show that the houses had some of the earliest versions of flush toilets. Now, this was 2600 BC when this began, so they were thinking about those things even back then. The people surrounding the city were apparently farmers supplying the cities with grain. The city dwellers were merchants and artisans who lived in blocks based on their trade. And it's assumed that this civilization was not an empire, but that each city was ruled by its own ruler. However, there's evidence of massive cooperation and shared technology across this civilization. Much of the technology shows uniformity. Bricks were manufactured across the civilization with the same specifications and dimensions. Archaeologists have determined that the peoples of the civilization worshiped some kind of fertility gods or goddesses, most likely a mother goddess. Swastikas and other symbols found in Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism have been found showing a connection to early Indian religion. Some of those symbols were later appropriated by the Nazis, the swastika in particular. Artifacts from the Indus civilization have been found by archaeologists as far southwest as the cities of Sumer. This shows that the Harappan civilization enjoyed the benefits of a broader trade network. By 1750 BC, it appears that the civilization was in quick decline, though archaeologists don't know the exact reason. Some evidence has emerged that severe flooding may have destroyed crops, food supply, and actual cities in the civilization caused other people in the region to just abandon that area by 1700 BC. What appears to be writing symbols have been found in excavated cities, but archaeologists to date have not been able to decipher these so that they can read them. Another major civilization along a river in India was the Ganges civilization. Toward the end of the Harappan civilization, a group of people from the flat pasture lands of Central Asia began migrating into the Indian subcontinent. These people spoke a language in the Indo-European language group. Languages in this group share similarity to European languages. English and other European languages have related word roots in Indian languages like Sanskrit or Hindi. These people spread throughout northern India and blended with the peoples residing there. The descendants of this blending of peoples called themselves the Aryans. And that's the original Aryans, the Aryans that the Nazis, they claimed that name, the Aryans, they appropriated it, and they tried to draw a connection between these Aryan peoples and the Germanic peoples, for their own political purposes. But these Aryans are the original Aryans. They moved eastward along the Ganges River basin and built a civilization along the Ganges. They developed iron tools and constructed walled cities, and many rival kingdoms were set by 500 BC, but a new Indian civilization had emerged. Society was set up in several social classes based on the occupation predominant in the family. Priestly families were at the top, warriors ranked second, herders, farmers, and artisans third, and then common laborers ranked fourth. The lowest group were called the Dalits, or untouchables. This group was employed in unpleasant jobs others did not want. A more complex system of castes, or social classes, developed in India as a result. And although officially outlawed in the 20th century by the Constitution of India in order to prevent discrimination, this caste system persists in Indian society today. Dalits are said to make up about 16% of the Indian population today. Well, like the Egyptians and Mesopotamians, the Aryans were polytheistic, believing in many gods. And early Indian scriptures developed called Vedas. The Vedas taught the idea that a spiritual power existed that permeated the universe and lived in all things. In theology, we call this panentheism. This impersonal divine power is called Brahman in this early Indian religion and in Hinduism today. The gods and goddesses of Vedic religion were personal incarnations of this impersonal Brahman power that is believed to be in everything and everyone. Vedic religion was dominated by a priesthood who held a monopoly on religious rituals used to maintain purity and caste status. So if you lose your purity, it's taught in these religions that you can lose your caste, lose your social position. And so that's going to be important later on when we study about colonialism. And that's a hint for ahead, but just be remembering that point, that the caste system in India is very important, and maintaining this religious purity is important for the maintaining of your caste. So, in response to the monopoly on the Vedic religious ritual held by the Aryan priesthood, mystics emerged who devoted their lives to seeking spiritual truth while circumventing the authority, going around the authority of the official priestly social class. So, you will later learn how Jainism and Buddhism are reactions against the authority of the Vedic priesthood. Jainism and Buddhism teach that enlightenment is possible through individual effort rather than through a paid professional class of priests. So keep that in mind when we do a little comparison later on to the Protestant Reformation, that Protestantism was not a rejection of all clergy, but a rejection of the idea that you have to go through a church hierarchy to receive grace from God. So this is a thing that is reflected in Christianity, that access to the divine does not always require an official priesthood in a religious system in Christianity, as well as in the Indian religion, which later comes to be called Hinduism. So let's go on and talk about China. Geography in China is very important. China covers a vast portion of East Asia, with population centers along the Pacific coast and in the areas of its two major river valleys. These rivers are called the Huanghe, the Yellow River, and the Shang, the Yangtze River. They have two different names each, all right? China was largely isolated from the rest of the world because of the long distances and natural barriers like mountains to the east, deserts to the north, and jungle areas to the south. Due to this isolation, the Chinese saw their land as the center of the earth and where the only real civilization resided. Outsiders were considered barbarians. Nevertheless, the Chinese did engage in significant long-distance trade with peoples from other lands throughout their history. The rich yellow-colored soil called loess from the Huanghe, which is called the Yellow River, provided fertile soil for a prosperous agricultural society to develop in China. Like the civilizations of the Middle East, flood control was an important problem. A strong central government and bureaucracy was a necessary development in order to organize people to work together on these water projects, both to control the flooding and to take advantage of the resources that the river systems provided. Now, what are the dynasties of ancient China? Let's look at that for a moment. A strong central government naturally needed strong rulers. So in China, ruling families came to power setting up dynasties. The first three dynasties or succession of rulers came from the same family were the Xia, the Shang, and the Zhou. And I have dates listed in my notes if you want those exact dates. The Xia was about 2070 BC to 1600 BC. Shang is 1600 to 1046, and the Zhou is 1046 to 256 BC. Essentially, one ruling family came to overthrow the previous ruling family, and this dynastic change led to a specific cultural and religious beliefs that came to be held by the Chinese. The Zhou promoted that's that third dynasty. They promoted this idea called the mandate of heaven to justify its overthrowing of the Shang. Now, this idea means that the gods or heaven would withdraw its approval of a ruling dynasty or family if that dynasty became corrupt. Now, indicators that a dynasty is corrupt and in need of change could be natural disasters like floods, epidemics, or famines. Should one of these things happen, some interpreted that a change in government was necessary. So they were sort of reading the times, so to speak. So the mandate of heaven was used to explain the idea that historians call the dynastic cycle, or the rise and fall of dynasties in China. Now, what were some of the religious beliefs in ancient China? The Chinese were basically polytheistic, like other cultures, but also had held a strong belief in the influence of the spirits of the dead ancestors on the lives of the living. If perhaps you've seen the Disney cartoon Mulan, and you see how involved the ghosts of the ancestors are in Mulan's life. This is a very core Chinese belief during this time. Chinese religious rituals came to surround this belief in the strong influence of ancestors on present life. And archaeologists have discovered some ancient Chinese practices in an effort to contact the gods or dead ancestors in oracle bones. This was a form of divination, is what I would call it, a form of divination, where priests or religious leaders wrote messages, perhaps questions, on bones or tortoise shells. And these items were heated in the fire, and the priests would attempt to interpret the answers to their questions based on the cracks that appeared. And they believed that the gods or ancestors communicated to them through this method. That's why I call it a form of divination. It's trying to talk to the dead or to another spirit world. Another strong Chinese religious belief was that of yin and yang. Yin is the earthly female forces, yang are the heavenly male forces. Notice that, earthly female, heavenly male. Think about the significance of that in Chinese culture. They believed the world reflected a balance between these forces. Now, science and technology in China. This is interesting. China was sophisticated scientifically and technologically for its time. Ancient astronomers observed the stars and movements of the planets and developed calendars based on this. Bronze tools were developed. One of the most guarded secrets of China was the methods of producing silk, which it sold to other civilizations through its long-distance trade. The ancient Chinese also were among the first to develop books made from bamboo to create pages. A technical writing system based on picture characters was developed as well. Because this writing system was not a phonics-based system, like the alphabet first developed by the Phoenicians, which we've previously talked about, the Chinese writing system was extremely difficult to learn and understand, with thousands of characters that needed to be memorized. Training as a scribe took much longer in China and was much more difficult than in its Western counterparts among the Phoenicians and the Sumerians and those in the Middle East. Okay. However, the advantages of China's agriculture, science, silk manufacturing, trade, and technology made China a strong civilization by 256 BCE. And I'm timing this just right. So that's the completion of our discussion today on the first Indian and Chinese civilization. And we'll take a few days break until next week when we start to talk about the ancient empires, the first real empire building that begins in ancient times. This is Mr. Yankee, World History Teacher from the World History Teacher channel. Have a good day.